Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Permit renewal season has arrived. From the Unified Carrier Registration System and a couple of state permits to the International Fuel Tax Agreement, the International Registration Plan, and more, Brittany Murphy and Caleb Sears of OOIDA's Permits and Licensing Department will stop by with some helpful reminders. It's no surprise to anyone listening that rates have not been good, but you still have to make a living. So how do you cope? One way is to know how much it costs you to run each and every mile that you do run. I'll discuss that and more with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And finally, as you've likely heard by now, the port strike has been averted or at least delayed along the East and Gulf coasts. So what does that mean for truckers who service those ports? I'll discuss that and provide an update on the government's hurricane response just as another storm heads toward the U.S. with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. On the heels of Hurricane Helene comes another one. Milton has been picking up strength in the Gulf of Mexico. It's forecast to become a Category 5 storm before making landfall on the west coast of Florida. Tampa and Orlando are among the bigger cities in Milton's path. Wednesday is the most likely day of impact. Authorities are warning of storm surges as high as 12 feet, along with flash and river flooding. Evacuations have already been ordered in some areas. To prepare for that mass exodus, Florida has started staging emergency fuel for gas-powered vehicles and charging stations for electric-powered ones. Florida officials say they are preparing for the largest evacuation since at least 2017 when Hurricane Irma hit the state. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has responded by expanding a state of emergency declaration to 51 counties. He said Floridians should prepare for more power outages and more disruptions, calling on them to have a week's worth of food and water and to be ready to hit the road. Milton, the incoming storm, will put stress on an already stressed emergency response system. The cleanup and recovery from Hurricane Helene in Florida are still taking shape, just as they're still taking shape in other states hit by the storm. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration late last week issued a regional emergency declaration that Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and both Carolinas have in effect right now. The declaration, effective immediately and set to run through October 27th, waives certain requirements for commercial truck drivers, providing direct relief for Helene recovery efforts. This as states scramble to reopen roadways lost to the storm. Progress is being made. The Tennessee DOT reopened State Route 350 in Greene County and State Route 133 in Johnson County late last week. Both were damaged by Helene. The Tennessee DOT said 49 sections of state routes were originally closed, and most of them have since been opened back up to traffic. Not everyone is as fortunate. The National Park Service says it will now completely shut down a detour around the closure of Interstate 40 in North Carolina and Tennessee. US 441 through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park had been opened up to non-commercial traffic last week, but officials said the roadway will be shut down each night now because a large number of commercial vehicle drivers were illegally using the road. As a reminder, heavy trucks are not allowed to use US 441 due to size and weight restrictions. Any trucker attempting to use US 441 will be turned away. Details on road closures, emergency orders, and anything else between with our coverage right here on Landline Now and on our website, landline.media. A recall related to Cummins X15 engines has been expanded. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says a problem with the fuel pump can cause the engine to stall. Daimler and Navistar trucks now fall under that recall. For Daimler, several hundred 2025 Freightliner Cascadia, Western Star 49X, Freightliner Custom Chassis XCM, and Freightliner Custom Chassis XCP vehicles are affected. For Navistar, more than 1,000 2025 International HX and International LT vehicles are being recalled because of the defect. Cummins will replace the fuel pump barrels free of charge. Owner notification letters are set to be mailed out before the end of November. If you've got questions or concerns before then, call Daimler, Navistar, or Cummins customer service. Two new co-sponsors have signed on to a bipartisan bill in the U.S. House that would give FMCSA the tools it needs to combat fraud in the transportation industry. H.R. 8505, the Household Goods Shipping Consumer Protection Act, seeks to restore and codify the agency's authority to issue civil penalties against bad actors. The legislation would also require brokers, freight forwarders, and carriers to provide a valid business address to FMCSA before acquiring operating authority. In a statement of support, OOIDA President Todd Spencer wrote that freight fraud committed by criminals and scam artists is devastating many small business truckers who are simply trying to make a living in a tough freight market. Spencer said the bill would give FMCSA better tools to fight back. The Household Goods Shipping Consumer Protection Act now counts 18 members of the House as co-sponsors. To get yours on board, check out the fightingfortruckers.com website and click on Key Trucking Legislation at the top of the page. The Labor Department has obtained a permanent injunction and court order against a California transportation company for allegedly retaliating against drivers. The Labor Department made the move after a group of drivers filed suit against CEVA for alleged labor violations. After finding out about the suit, drivers say a separate company, Cargomatic, intimidated them and threatened to fire those who are seeking unpaid wages and other remedies for the alleged violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Cargomatic is a logistics company that provides drivers who transport freight for shipping companies. Since at least 2019, Cargomatic has contracted drivers to deliver cargo for CEVA Freight. The Pennsylvania DOT and Pennsylvania State Police are teaming up to catch work zone speeders. Some troopers are setting up with radar guns inside yellow PennDOT work trucks. Once a speeder or reckless driver is spotted, troopers in marked cars nearby make the stop. It's called Operation Yellow Jacket. The initiative has already begun in southeastern Pennsylvania. Others are in the works. And finally, truckers traveling Interstate 40 through Knoxville, Tennessee will have one less place to stop in the coming days. TA Travel Centers of America has confirmed it is closing the TA Knoxville East location off Lovell Road. That includes the location's more than 125 truck parking spaces. A spokesperson told Landline the decision was made because TA has another travel center located just one highway exit west of that location on Watt Road along I-40. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. You can write and post a review of the doctor who performed your DOT physical to be shared with your fellow truckers, or look up other reviews of a doctor through the OOIDA website, OOIDA.com. Just go to the main menu at the upper left corner of the page, and under Resources, click on Certified Medical Examiner Review. Again, that's at the website, OOIDA.com. Starting Saturday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the ATHS Yellow Rose Truck Show. That takes place at the J.B. Wells Park Pavilion in Gonzales, Texas. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Registration is now open for OOIDA's Truck to Success Seminar, which runs for 3 days starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri. Truck to Success features trainers, both from OOIDA and elsewhere, who provide a comprehensive course in what it takes to become and succeed as an owner-operator. The deadline to register to attend in person is passed, but you can still register to attend by Zoom anytime before October 21st. We'll have a link to more information at OOIDA.com. If you'd like to support the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship, you can donate to the fund. Send tax-deductible donations to OOIDA Foundation, Inc., 1 Northwest OOIDA Drive, Grain Valley, Missouri, 64029. Next, Scott Thompson covers upcoming permit renewals with Brittany Murphy and Caleb Sears of OOIDA's Permits and Licensing Department. I'll discuss knowing your cost of operations and how to figure it with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch, and we'll hear the latest on the port strike from Bryce Mungen of OOIDA. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back. October can mean several things: postseason baseball, Halloween, pumpkin patches, and more. And the more today includes permit renewal season. It's officially kicked off, and joining us with information you might need a reminder about are Brittany Murphy and Caleb Sears of OOIDA's Permits and Licensing Department. Good to see both of you.
Thanks for having us.
I didn't do a count here, but the list of permits up for renewal is long, like really long. Have you been getting a lot of calls on this? And if not, I imagine you will be, right?
The calls have started generating. We have a few different things that are renewing this year that normally wouldn't renew every year.
Yeah, so we're going to go over those. Hopefully that will cut down maybe on a few of those phone calls here, but we'll try to get through all of it here. The easiest thing to do is just run through this list, and you both can fill us in on what we need to know. Let's start with the yearly renewals, which opened up on October 1st, and a good place, I think, to start is the UCR, the Unified Carrier Registration. What do people need to know there?
So the UCR for 2025 did open up October 1st. That is due to be renewed by December 31st. The price of that permit is based on tiers, how many vehicles that you have operating. This is required for motor carriers, brokers, freight forwarders, leasing companies, anyone that's pretty much operating in interstate commerce.
Which is most people. I mean, I shouldn't say most people, but there's a lot of people out there that need to be thinking about this.
Correct.
Right, and the deadline, as you mentioned there, is December 31st.
December 31st, they will start enforcing it, come January 1st. So.
And with all of these things, I think the sooner you can get them done, the better. You don't want to be waiting until Christmas Day to start doing all this stuff, because you're probably going to find yourself behind the eight ball there. So there you go. That's UCR. Basic information. I think most people already know about that one for sure. Moving on to other things, some of these are state-by-state basis types of things, right? One of the items that you have your eye on and that people out there should have their eye on, especially if they're based in New Mexico, yearly renewals there are due soon as well, right?
Correct, yeah, and that's for anyone that operates or drives through the state of New Mexico at all over that 26,001 pounds gross vehicle weight. You want to make sure you have that renewed by December 31st as well to make sure that you don't have any gap in coverage, because they will start enforcing that one on January 1st as well. And that one renews every year, so that one's kind of less in the unexpected territory and more of just in the expected, just kind of with the UCR as well.
Yeah, and I think I misspoke there. I said New Mexico-based carriers, but as you point out,
yes, it's anybody that drives through the state of New Mexico.
Right. If you're crossing that border into New Mexico, this does apply to you. And obviously, there are plenty of folks out there that it does apply to. New York, on the other side of the United States, New York permits not yearly, I don't believe, but renewals are going to be due for some people, right?
So this permit actually renews in 3-year blocks. So anyone that had a permit issued prior to October 1st, you have a Series 24 permit. It does need to be renewed for a Series 25, and that will be good for 3 years.
3 years. Okay. But yeah, so there are people out there that this won't apply to, right? But there are plenty of other people that it will.
Anyone that had a permit issued prior to October 1st, their permit needs to be renewed by the end of the year for the Series 25. The only people that would be exempt from a New York permit is someone operating a vehicle under 18,000 pounds.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Yeah, that clears up some confusion. Again, with all these things, there's so many of them, and I know this is a recurring theme that we talk about with the trucking industry. There are so many of these permits and renewal dates and these things that you got to remember. It's overwhelming, and that's why you both and everybody else with the Permits and Licensing Department is here to help people through that process, and we'll certainly talk about that here in a little bit. But again, it is confusing, and if people are confused out there, I understand why, because I get confused about it easily. That takes care of some of these kind of October-specific renewals that are now open. The list continues, though, with other permits that may be due for renewal. Starting with IFTA, the International Fuel Tax Agreement. What do people need to know there?
Yeah, so with your IFTA, so as most people know that you got to do the quarterly filings each quarter, which quarter 3 is going to be due at the end of this month, October. So that's super important to get in and done. But on top of those quarterly filings, you do usually have to renew your actual IFTA license each year. Some states will automatically send those new stickers out to you as long as you're up to date on those quarterly filings. Some states, though, they want you to submit a new application or go online and actually request those stickers to be sent out to you. And some states have fees. Some states don't have fees. It's kind of just state by state thing. But we can absolutely answer those questions in the permits and licensing department, since it kind of is on a state by state thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and because there's a lot of information, and again, it can get confusing there. The International Registration Plan, another one people need to keep an eye on here. What is the deal there?
So that's going to be your base plates. Each state's going to be a little bit different as to when their plates are renewing, so it is extremely important that you are taking a look at your cab cards to see when you are due for that renewal. Most states do want that renewal submitted to them 90 days in advance. So if your, plate's running out at the end of the year,
now's the time.
Maybe
yesterday was the time.
You might already be late on submitting it. So it's definitely important to keep an eye on your expiration date on your cab cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, keep an eye on that calendar, which is an ongoing thing that you got to do here. And the MCS 150, a biennial update. What is the deal there?
Yeah, so that MCS 150 is what actually updates your DOT number. You're due for it every 2 years, called your biennial update, based off of the last 2 digits of your U.S. DOT number. The second to last digit, whether it's even or odd, will tell you whether you're due in an even or odd year. And the last digit will tell you what month you're due in, just based off of what numeric one it lines up with. Nobody's due in November or December, so October is kind of the last ones for the biennial updates here. But we definitely do recommend logging in, getting into Safer, Company Snapshot, making sure that all of your US DOT number information is all current and accurate just before the end of the year here.
Can I ask you kind of an organizational question? Because I know everybody has their own sort of way of organizing these things. Again, you deal with this information every day. You're getting calls every day and providing, again, helpful advice about all of this. Is there anything you tell people about the best way to kind of make sure they are keeping up to date on all these things? I know it can be different for everybody. And again, everybody's got their own system, but, do you have any advice in terms of that? Because again, this information, it's coming from every direction, and it's always, it's always coming up.
It is always coming up, but it is also going to be very specific to your operation. So once you can kind of sit down and get a list of I'm due for this and this month and this month and this month, keep it.
Yeah.
Put it there on your calendar. You can always call us. We could take a look at things for you. But once you kind of established it that first time, keep that list handy and check in on it every now and then. Because you're going to have the same permits every year, and they're going to be due at the same time every year. So
yeah. And if you're someone who likes to use their phone, the calendar, maybe, put a yearly reminder on there for sure to remind you, as you point out there, Brittany. It's gonna be the same thing the following year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So yeah, if you've got a good way of keeping that on track there, it's a good way to keep yourself organized for sure. We're kind of rounding third base here. A few more items to take note of, though, with regard to business paperwork. We've got the franchise tax for corporations and the beneficial ownership information, or BOI, which has, I know, been creating some confusion out there for understandable reasons. Let's start, though, with the franchise tax. What do we need to know there?
Yeah, so that franchise tax is just for LLCs, corporations. Typically, it's just an annual filing that you have to do with your Secretary of State in order to maintain that actual business filing. It's usually pretty simple. You just got to log into the website. That one you'll have to contact your Secretary of State for help with. Not really something that permits and licensing can do on our side. but we would absolutely be able to assist you with figuring out who to call and where to go to get that done.
Gotcha. And I mentioned the beneficial ownership information. This is a new one, and we've done a few segments on this over the past several months, but again, I know there is some confusion out there about what exactly do I need to do, when do I need to do it, what does doing it even look like? So just as a reminder, I guess, to start off, the beneficial ownership information was meant to, or is meant to, kind of cut down on fraud and shell companies and tax fraud and that sort of thing. But what do our listeners need to know about what they need to do?
Yeah, so for the BOI, I feel like our members definitely need to know that you don't have to pay anyone to do this. You can absolutely go online, do it for free on your own. You've already got all the information at your disposal to be able to actually do that filing. You do it through FinCEN, and they will just ask for your basic business information, address, business name, tax ID, and then they're just going to want to know who actually owns that business. And that's essentially, from my understanding, what that BOI is doing is just consolidating that ownership information into one kind of place for all corporations. Anyone that has had the business before this year, before January 1st of this year, does need to do it before the end of the year. That's kind of their grace period on that. But if you've got a business that just started this year, you don't have much time to get it done. You've got 90 days from the start of creation, and then starting next year, you've only got 30 days to get it filed once you set up that business.
Yeah. And again, that website is fincen.gov/BOI. That's where you can go for more information. And again, I know even like tax professionals are still trying to figure out exactly how this works and what they need to do and what role they play in it. I imagine most of the questions that you're getting over the phone, I would imagine, are related to what the heck is this thing and what do I need to do? And those are valid questions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are most people confused about? Is it just the overall basis of what it is?
Yeah, kind of the overall basis of what it is. Do I need to file? Where do I file? A lot of just kind of, there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of it isn't parsed down to layman's
simple terms. Yeah.
So that way people can understand it. And that's kind of what we've done here a little bit on our side with some stuff to just kind of better understand it and better help our members.
Yeah, and we were talking even before we hit record on this here that I imagine people are going to start getting emails or calls or text messages that are from scammers that are going to offer to do this for you.
And they already have been getting them. Yep, we've already gotten calls.
You've already gotten those.
Yep, we've already gotten calls, people, wanting to charge lots and lots of money for this kind of stuff. And it's pretty common. It's really unfortunate that it's something that is allowed to go on. But, just charging that enormous amounts of money for things that you can do absolutely for free.
Yeah, and as a general reminder, if you get a phone call or a text like that, take a step back. Don't give them any money.
Yeah, don't pay anybody any money.
Which leads us to, what they can do, which is to call both of you and your colleagues up in the permits and licensing department. Walk us through real quick, where they can call, what they can ask about, and so on and so forth.
If you give us a shout at the 800-444-5791 and ask to speak with the permits and licensing department, we would pretty much just need you to have your U.S. DOT number handy, and we can take a look at everything and see what you're due for and what's coming up, and we can provide the service for you or, point you in the right direction to get it done on your own.
Yeah. That phone number one more time?
It is 800-444-5791.
There it is. Again, it is a complicated world out there, and it helps to have a friendly voice and a friendly person helping you along. You two qualify for that, and everybody else in this building does as well. So please do, call that number, ask whatever questions you may have, and you two and others are more than happy to answer those. So there you go. Caleb, Brittany, thanks for your time, and again, for the helping hand today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Brittany Murphy and Caleb Sears of OOIDA. This is Landline Now, and we're back right after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. It's no surprise to anyone listening right now that rates have not been good, but you still have to make a living, so how do you cope? Here to discuss that and more are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark.
So we want to skip right past the fact that rates are low because I guess that's really not news if we just face the facts. So let's talk about coping with this. And one of the things that you guys have stressed over the years over and over is you can't know if you're making money and you can't make money if you don't know how much it costs you to run.
Yeah, cost of operation is a big issue. Unfortunately, many owner-operators out there have not worked out their cost of operation. Of course, in talking about the rates being low, that attributes to it. Because when you don't know what it costs you to operate your truck, how do you bargain for the right rate? I mean, people are hauling stuff out there right now for, I hate to say it, for fuel money. And, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was out there, I didn't work for the fuel companies. I mean, maybe it felt like I did, but that was not the idea.
Absolutely. And this is something interesting because we've talked about with some of the folks that have worked on the Truck to Success seminar and talk with folks there. And when they introduce them to this and they get them to sit down and figure it out, it's amazing how many folks discover, wait a minute, I've been hauling freight at a loss.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It all comes down to the numbers. If you don't run your numbers and understand your numbers, how do you know that you're making a profit? Or how do you know when you're just right on that line? And, and people end up going broke and they're like, I don't understand why. I've been rolling. My wheels are turning. But, it used to be said when I started out in the industry back in the 80s, if they're not turning, you're not earning. Nowadays, they could be turning and you're losing.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead and talk about calculating your cost of operations. And there will be math involved, unfortunately. But we've talked before about this again, but it breaks down into fixed costs and variable costs. And you've got to know both of those things. Can you all give us some example of fixed costs?
Sure. Yeah, Mark, your fixed costs are costs that remain the same. Your insurance premium, your truck payment. There are a lot of costs that remain the same throughout. Tags, you must get tags for your truck, your 2290, all the costs that go into operating your business are what you would say your fixed costs. These are costs that you can take and you can break down over a 12-month period and know exactly what they're going to cost you every month.
And I think one of them that doesn't get talked about enough, but we have talked about it here on the show, is the fact one of those needs to be how much do I pay myself every week, every month for the year?
Absolutely. And that's one thing that a lot of owner-operators overlook is paying themselves. When I ran my business, I was essentially an employee on a salary, and I pulled a salary every week, regardless. Now we were fairly profitable, but, I knew my numbers and I knew there was enough I could pull my salary every week. And that helped my household, to balance our books and my company. That's definitely one that should be figured in there. One of the first things that you should figure is paying yourself, because if you're not paying yourself, you're doing yourself a big disservice.
Well, and it also allows you to project over a long period of time throughout the year to be able to have a budget, and have some restraints in certain areas and aspects of trucking in general, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And budgeting is an important thing here. Now, that's fixed costs we've talked about. Let's talk about variable costs, things that can change, trip to trip even, day to day, sometimes month to month. What are those?
Fuel's a big one. Also, maintenance, I would say those are some typical variable, costs associated with that, because you never know when you're going to blow some tires or when injectors are going to go bad. And fuel is going to fluctuate week to week, month to month, as far as that goes. And you hope it's not in the negative way too much, but, you have to take that under consideration, and you have to be able to, like I said earlier, project into the future and know what you're going to be working with for the upcoming weeks and months and throughout the whole year.
Yeah, and on those variable costs, I mean, like Aaron said, they change. It's the big unknown. Fuel is one of your biggest expenses. I mean, because without fuel, the truck's not rolling. And like I said earlier, we don't work for the fuel companies, although sometimes it feels like we do. Knowing those variable costs and keeping track of those, you're a business out there. I know a lot of folks, owner-operators especially, they think, well, I'm going to hire this stuff out. I'm going to let somebody else do all my stuff, and I'm just going to drive the truck. And that is a mistake. I mean, you're a business out there. You must know your fixed costs. You must know your variable costs. You must know the rate that you need to be profitable, where your break-even point is. And, currently we've got a lot of folks out there hauling for less than what it takes to be profitable. And they don't even know it. And, how do you operate a business and stay in the positive if you don't know what your costs are?
And this is especially important for someone that's been in business 5 years or less, because this can honestly determine whether or not you're in business for the next 5 years, right? So many businesses go out of business the first year, year 2, year 5. They don't make it because you don't actually take the time to work out a budget or your finances. And that's honestly the most important thing that you could do yourself. You're doing yourself a disservice by not figuring out a budget and figuring out what you're going to make. And a lot of these guys, even more so when you've been in business 20 or 30 years, you rest on your laurels, you get complacent. You still need to be doing that as well. You may have a better understanding of the outcomes, but you still need to do that as well. I would say that there's a lot of people that I get calls that have been in business 25, 30 years, and they don't know their cost of operations. And I've sat there and I've worked with a multitude of members, and they're operating in the red, and it's scary. And they've been in business 30 years, and I can't understand how they have been.
Yeah. I want to get back to kind of a process here. We've talked about fixed and variable costs. Once you have those, what is your next step? What is your next calculation to arrive at, say, a cost per mile?
Well, I mean, basically, you like you said, there's going to be math involved. It's not real complicated math, but you take those fixed costs and you take them over your 12-month period, break them down by 12 on a monthly basis. Your variable costs, which just by the nature of the calling them variable costs, change. So you try to project what those are going to be and what your expenditures are going to be, what your income's going to be, and then of course OOIDA has a real great opportunity on their website. It's the cost of operations spreadsheet, where it does the math for you. You can go through this cost of operation website at OOIDA.com and work out exactly what it costs you per mile. Enter all your variable costs, enter all your fixed costs, unforeseen. I mean, there's always unforeseen stuff. You can enter all this information and click a button, and it will fill out the spreadsheet, and it will give you what your cost of operation is. And knowing your cost of operation, then if a broker's lowballing you, if you can do that run or not, or if you got to, sometimes you just got to say, hey, nope, can't do that one. Hang up the phone and see what else is out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's also important to note that the more you do this, the more familiar you become with the numbers, the easier it becomes, right? Repetition is key. So it may be scary doing some math the first time, but like Tom said on the OOIDA website, it does the math for you. All you have to do is input the numbers. And then you can also save that to a document as well, or to a spreadsheet, and you can update those numbers as the months go by. That way you don't have to fill in everything, every single time, and it'll be a lot easier just to input 2 or 3 variable costs, as far as that goes. That way you can calculate and project even better.
And folks, we want to tell you where this is here. We will put a link on our website, landlinenow.com, directly to this. But if you go to the main menu at OOIDA.com, scroll down to resources on the lower left and click on cost per mile, there's a lot of information down on that page, but the real benefit is that spreadsheet that Tom and Aaron have mentioned. You click on that to download it, and you probably need a real computer rather than a phone for this. But
I pulled it up here on the phone, Mark. It is here, but I have to say it would be much easier to use on a big screen on a computer. Yes.
But once you open the spreadsheet, the first thing that comes up is an introduction. At the bottom, you'll see several tabs. Click on the one that says cost of operations, and once you're in there, just fill in the information and be honest about what these things are costing you. Don't think, well, if I just reduce my cost of fuel, because that's not something you control.
No. And that is right back to the fuel, get with like OOIDA offers a fuel card, Fleet One fuel card. That can save you, hundreds of dollars off of your fuel costs, and that being one of your biggest expenses. But be honest with these numbers, because if you're not honest with the numbers, then they're not going to mean anything. If they're not true numbers, you used to hear this a lot, fuzzy math. Let's don't use fuzzy math. Let's use real math.
Yeah, don't use round numbers. Use the actual dollars and cents. And as the side note, this is free. Use it.
Yep.
That's what it's there for.
As a member of OOIDA, I couldn't tell you how many times. And again, back to when I started, the profit margins were bigger. And when I got into the business, I was sloppy with my money at first, and there was still money left over. Today, the profit margins are so slim that just a few cents one way or another means whether you're making money or whether you're not going to be around next year.
Absolutely. And again, this may seem obvious, but once people have a cost of per mile from this cost of operations calculator, what do they do with that figure when they're out there looking for loads?
Well, of course, once you know what it costs you to operate, then when you're booking loads, ideally, you'd like to have a 40% profit margin on there. So get your actual cost of operation, add 40%, and then start looking for loads and try to negotiate with those numbers in mind. Two things will happen. First, the brokers they'll treat you differently when you come to the table with some knowledge. And you know your numbers and you know what it's got to be, where they can't just lowball you. And then second, and more importantly, you will be profitable. You can know that you're profitable. And if you're not profitable, if you can't make a profit out there based on the freight rolling down the road, stay home. Stay home. I would much rather sit home and not be taking all the risk than put somebody's freight on my truck for a loss where I'm losing money and I have all that risk. I hear this a lot, say down in Florida, folks get a rate into Florida that's not great, it's all right. And then they get down into Florida and they're coming out and these brokers are trying to lowball them, say, well, this will pay you fuel. This will pay your fuel. All that does is perpetuate more cheap freight. You need more than fuel money. You have a lot of risk when you put that product on your truck. A lot of liability, and you should make money off that.
Well, guys, we've run out of time here, but I want to thank you both for this information, and hopefully we help some folks out.
Yeah, hopefully. Call the compliance department. We'll help you with the cost of operation should you need it.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you as always, Mark.
And again, folks, you can get that spreadsheet at OOIDA.com or call compliance at 816-229-5791. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the program. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
If you're running ultra-low sulfur diesel in your vehicle, make sure you are prepared and protected all winter long with Howes Diesel Treat, the #1 anti-gel product in North America from the 100-plus-year trusted brand Howes Products.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Repair secured. Load assured.
Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. As you've likely heard by now, the port strike has been averted, or at least delayed, along the east and Gulf coasts. So what does that mean for truckers who service those ports? Here to discuss that and to provide an update on the government's hurricane response just as another storm heads toward the U.S. is Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Bryce, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How about you?
Very well. And at least we have some good news for people in the fact that this port strike is at least over, but there is an agreement in place. I'm wondering if you can kind of briefly walk us through the highlights of the agreement that has put the ports back to work.
Yes, so as I'm sure for most folks that are watching, you've seen that the port strike kind of centered around two of the top line items were pay and talks about automation. And the union, the longshoremen's union and the carriers have reached a tentative agreement to basically extend their current agreements until January 15th, 2025. So, for the next few months here. And according to reports, they've preliminarily agreed to a 62% wage increase. So it sounds like at least on the issue of pay, there has been some progress. Certainly, for the first few days, it didn't sound like a whole lot of talks were going on. So, for our members and everyone else who's kind of watching with bated breath how this would turn out, it's good to see at least there's a tentative agreement here to reopen the ports.
The fact that the longshoremen are getting such a substantial increase, and my gosh, that is substantial, it kind of compels a comparison with how truckers are treated and paid at those same ports, despite being just as vital to moving the freight. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what some of the issues regarding trucking are at the ports that need to be resolved.
Yeah, and that's kind of influenced our, broader approach or broader thoughts about this strike is that we don't hear a whole lot of good things from our members or from truckers who service ports. They're never really treated all that well. And we know at ports and across the supply chain, truckers' time just simply isn't valued, especially employees. As we've talked about a lot, truckers are exempted from the FLSA's overtime guarantee. So unlike most blue-collar workers, truckers aren't guaranteed overtime pay when they work over 40 hours. And in the ports and elsewhere, truckers are their time is treated as dispensable. So they're treated as, a mobile warehouse or whatever else. Drivers are constantly facing downward pressure on their earnings because no one else values their time in the supply chain. So it's certainly we didn't want to see this port strike drag out because the longer this goes on, the longer especially members who directly service those ports and depend on that activity are going to see negative effects. But it's almost like certainly whatever the outcome here isn't going to make a big difference one way or another ultimately for the way drivers are treated in the ports. Before this, like I said, weren't treated very well and their time isn't valued. And after this, it's unfortunately going to be much of the same.
Now, this might all start up again in January when the temporary strike reprieve ends. What are some of the possible consequences, both to trucking and the overall economy, if this strike restarts?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of the same pressures start back up. I think most people watching this, ourselves included, especially once you start talking about a strike that goes beyond a week, you're going to see the effects really start to build up. I think the difficulty in forecasting what's going to happen in January is a lot of it, frankly, is going to come down to what happens with the election. That was one of the big factors here that was at play was a lot of outside groups and lawmakers were pushing the Biden administration to step in, end the strike, and require that the longshoremen return to work. Obviously, if there's going to be a change in administrations, that dynamic will change. But even beside that, come January, we will be past the November election. So that takes some of the, I think, political attention off of the issue. So, frankly, it's hard to forecast. Certainly, we're concerned about the same negative effects if a long strike were to take place. But at the same time, I think some of those political pressures won't quite be there when this next deadline comes up.
Okay. Let's switch to our other topic today because it is something pretty vital right now. A new hurricane is sweeping toward Florida as we speak. But while that happens, we're still cleaning up and recovering from Hurricane Helene. Bryce, the DOT has activated a hotline. What exactly is this hotline? What does it do, and how is it helping truckers?
Yes, and so the hotline it's a routing assistant hotline, and it's for responders providing assistance to those areas affected. So basically for response personnel and their contractors conducting relief missions, U.S. DOT is trying to collect information and provide it for people providing those assistance to make sure they can obviously get to where they need to be. The hotline number is 833-99-ROADS or 833-997-6237. And again, I think this is the larger challenge with this response effort is it's just such a large area, so many different jurisdictions involved, whether it's the state or federal level and the local level, and just a constantly changing landscape that it's difficult to have the most up-to-date information. So hopefully this is a good way for people who are providing that response to have the best information available.
I don't recall this popping up in previous years with previous situations like this. Is this hotline a new program? And if so, why was it put in place?
To be honest, I am not as familiar with that as well. If I was just kind of looking at this, I think one of the things that surprised everyone or surprised a lot of people is this is just not an area that folks typically thought of as prone to hurricane-type disasters. So, I can't say for sure, but looking at this just from the outside, kind of assessing this situation, I think it's especially helpful for responders and for people in these regions on whether it's Florida or other areas that are more prepared generally for these types of disasters. I think that's one reason why this hotline can be especially helpful.
Okay. Another action by the government has been a regional emergency declaration. What states are covered under this declaration?
Yes. So it's Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. So a pretty large region that's covered by this declaration.
That is a lot. Now, what does the declaration do in terms of how trucks operate?
Yes, and so mainly what this does is it waives the enforcement of basically hours of service regulations for drivers and trucks that are providing direct relief assistance to these affected states. So again, this is only for trucks that are completing hauls directly related to immediate assistance. It doesn't include transportation of materials related to the long-term repair or rehabilitation of infrastructure or routine commercial deliveries. Again, it's regulatory relief and suspension of basically, again, those hours of service rules for trips that are directly responding to the emergency.
Okay. The administration, we just have a little bit of time left. They're also lending a hand to the North Carolina DOT. Can you just briefly tell us what's happening there?
Yeah, so the top lines that we've seen is that the Federal Highway Administration announced that $100 million in emergency relief money would be available for the North Carolina Department of Transportation, as well as $32 million for Tennessee DOT and $2 million for South Carolina. So that's just the first amount. I don't think anyone even really has a handle on what the full rebuilding costs will be, but certainly it's going to be a very, very large number.
Okay. Bryce, thank you very much for the information. We sure appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I've been talking with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, again, that hotline is 833-99-ROADS. That's 833-99-ROADS, which is 833-997-6237. Thank you for joining our program today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and information for you. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.